Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this pilot site information session. I'm Melissa Skeet with the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition, also known as MISAC. Today, we'll walk through an overview of the MMIP HRT pilot site application process and answer any questions you may have. We'll also share next steps and additional resources to support you through this process. Here is our agenda for the day. Before we dive in, I'd like to acknowledge the important work that many of you are already doing in our communities to address missing and murdered Indigenous persons, MMIP. This initiative is about strengthening our collective efforts and ensuring that culturally rooted, community-driven responses are supported. We're excited to share more about the MMIP Healing and Response Team's HRT Special Initiative and the process for selecting pilot sites. This project is led by MUSAC in partnership with the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, NIWRC, and Alaska Native Women's Resource Center, AKNWRC. It is inspired by the Not Invisible Act Commission's recommendations to combat the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis that disproportionately impacts our communities. This project focuses on MMIP cases intersecting with domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking. One of the main goals of this project is to develop models for culturally based healing and response teams that include victim-centered, trauma-informed care for survivors, families, and the community as a whole. Implementing tribal-based models of care will empower communities and service providers to address MMIP cases related to gender-based violence in ways that are meaningful and specific to their community's needs. There are 574 federally recognized tribes and large urban Indian populations situated around the country. There is no one-size-fits-all or one-size-fits-many solutions to addressing this crisis. This project will help us identify a range of best practices that can be used as starting points and tailored to different communities to combat this crisis. This project will also focus on ways for healing and response teams to enhance intergovernmental coordination to improve the MMIP response. One of the main products we will be developing is a customizable healing and response team's HRT toolkit to provide comprehensive and sustainable resources for MMIP response efforts. Let's get started. I want to take a moment to highlight the important remarks made by Rosie Hidalgo during Day 2 of the 2024 Tribal Consultation regarding the Healing and Response Team's Special Initiative. Rosie Hidalgo previously served as the Director of Office on Violence Against Women, OVW, at the U.S. Department of Justice. She has been a long-standing advocate for survivors of gender-based violence and works to strengthen policies and initiatives that support Indigenous communities in addressing missing and murdered Indigenous persons, MMIP, domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking. In response to recommendations from the Not Invisible Act Commission, OVW launched the Healing and Response Team's Special Initiative. In September, we awarded $2 million to the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition to assess and expand healing and response team models across tribal and urban Indian communities. This tribal-based approach targets MMIP cases connected to domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, and sex trafficking. Through this initiative, we also will be able to fund 3 pilot sites and support the development of promising practices and tools that can be shared with other tribes. Program Overview. The MMIP Healing and Response Team's HRT Special Initiative was created by the Office on Violence Against Women, OVW, in direct response to the recommendations of the Not Invisible Act Commission. The pilot site project timeline runs from October 1st, 2025 to September 30th, 2027. During this project, MUSAC will work with 3 pilot sites to develop healing and response teams models. This work will inform the development of guidelines, principles, and recommendations for healing and response teams and development of a toolkit that can be customized and adapted by a range of audiences, including tribally led community-based organizations, Indian tribes, and urban Indian organizations. Project purpose. This grant is designed to enhance the capacity of tribal and urban Indian organizations in responding to MMIP cases and community-led MMIP response efforts. Eligibility criteria. Eligible applicants include Indian tribal governments or tribal consortiums, urban Indian organizations or tribal nonprofit organizations, tribal coalitions. It's important that applicants demonstrate experience in MMIP-related services and gender-based violence response, capacity to implement a healing and response team HRT, ability to collaborate with partners. So here are key dates and deadlines. Application release, April 2nd, 2025. Application deadline, May 9th, 2025. Interview dates, May 12th through May 16th, 2025. Program plan due, June 6, 2025. Project notification, October 1st, 2025. Project period start, October 1st, 2025. Project period end, September 30th, 2027. Key information. So the first phase of the application process involves submitting a brief application that provides an overview of your organization's experience responding to MMIP cases. Applicants will be asked to describe how their organization currently addresses MMIP-related cases, including any work in survivor support, advocacy, or justice efforts. So in addition, applicants should explain their proposed approach to this project, including how they would implement a healing and response team's HRT and integrate it into their existing work. The goal of this phase is to assess each applicant's alignment with the project's objectives. Applicants will also need to provide some supporting documentation. All applicants are required to submit a statement on official letterhead, signed by the entity's leader, authorizing the entity to apply for this project. A tribal consortium must provide additional documentation. A tribal consortium must include a tribal resolution or other documents demonstrating authority to apply from each tribe or tribal consortium member. A tribal resolution or equivalent documentation must state that the applicant is authorized to submit an application on behalf of the Indian tribes, be current, dated after April 2nd, 2025, and be signed by the authorized representatives from the applicant and tribes. In lieu of a tribal resolution, a tribal consortium with existing consortium's bylaws or other governance documents that allow action without explicit authorization from the tribal consortium members may submit a copy of the bylaws or other governance documents that allow the consortium's actions without explicit support from all consortium members. This documentation must be sufficient to demonstrate authority for the application, must contain authorized signatures, and must be submitted by the application due date. Applicants will also need to include a biosketch, resume, or CV of any staff identified as playing a key role on the proposed project. Phase 2. After the initial review, applicants with the highest rated proposals will be invited to participate in an interview the week of May 12th through May 16th, 2025. These interviews will allow us to learn more about your organization's capacity, readiness, and commitment to implementing a healing and response team. We will also use this time to clarify any details from the initial application and discuss how your team envisions collaboration with MUSAC and other partners. If you are invited for an interview, we encourage you to come prepared to discuss your experience in depth and provide examples of how you have supported MMIP response efforts in the past. Phase 3. Following the interviews, final applicants will work closely with MUSAC to develop a detailed program plan. budget, and MOU outlining how they will implement their Healing and Response Team project and defining the relationship between MUSAC and the applicant. This program plan should include a clear implementation strategy with concrete goals and activities, roles and responsibilities of key personnel and collaborators and discussion of how they will collaborate, a timeline of activities to be carried out over the grant period. The goal of this phase is to ensure that selected pilot sites have a structured, actionable plan for success before receiving funding. These three-phase approach helps us select pilot sites that are well prepared, committed, and capable of implementing a healing and response team. Submitting an application, Part 1. Step 1. When you first open the pilot site application, you'll land on a screen that gives you a brief overview over your organization's role in this project. This is just to help ground the work and clarify the purpose. You'll also see a link to the FAQ document, so if you have questions along the way, that'll be a good place to start. Step 2. Next, you'll come to the eligibility section. Your organization will need to fall within one of the categories listed in the application, so please read through this part carefully. We've also included important information on an out-of-scope activities and the documentation that will be required. So just a heads up, this page is actually located toward the end of the application form, so just be sure to scroll through and give it a solid look before you submit. Part 2. Step 3. On this screen, you'll be asked to provide information about your organization. Just a quick reminder, any fields marked with an asterisk are required, so make sure those are filled out before you move on. This part helps us better understand who is applying, so be as clear and thorough as you can. Step 4. After completing your contact details, the next section focuses on your organization's experience. Be sure to keep an eye on the character limits when typing your responses. If you need more space to share details, no problem. You'll have the option to upload a separate document with your answers. Part 3. Step 5. In this section of the pilot site application, you'll be asked to share what you plan to do if selected. This includes outlining your proposed activities, current and proposed partnerships, anticipated challenges, and the types of support you may need. A response is required for each of the narrative sections listed in this part of the form. Step 6. Next, you'll be asked to share who at your organization will be responsible for carrying out this project. Please include their name, position, or title, how much of their time will be dedicated to this project, and a brief summary of their experience and qualifications. Submitting an application. So in this final step of the pilot site, you'll be asked to upload a few required supporting documents that include proof of organization's eligibility or nonprofit status, resumes, biosketch or CVs of key project staff involved in the project, statement of support authorizing entity application for this project. If you're a tribal consortium, you'll also need to submit a tribal resolution or other equivalent documentation. Once you have completed all sessions, go ahead and click the submit button. Just keep in mind, once it's submitted, you will not be able to make any changes. Frequently asked questions. So we understand there's a lot to process here, and there may be a few questions we anticipate may come up as this work evolves. So we've developed a FAQ document for your viewing to help clarify key areas of the project. If you don't see a question listed in the FAQ, we encourage you to reach out directly and we'll follow up with you. We will also be adding to the FAQ document based on questions that come up during the application period. Resources. We want to provide some additional information and resources to support you through this process. So if you encounter any technical difficulties or have questions about the application process, please reach out to me, Melissa Skeet, the MMIP HRT Project Coordinator at mmIphrt@musac.org. For financial or budget-related inquiries, please contact Kathy Sullivan, MUSAC Finance Director, at ksullivan@musac.org. In addition, you can find the latest project updates and resources on the MMIP HRT webpage hosted by MUSAC. You can also find additional details in the OVW Award Solicitation document, which outlines grant expectations and requirements. Yeah, thank you. We look forward to continuing this work alongside tribal nations, coalitions, and community-based organizations. Thank you so much.